A few years back, Malaysian aviation industry used to be dominated only by Malaysia Airlines. Now, not anymore. Sit back, relax as we bring to you some juicy insights of the industry here in Malaysia with Air Asia as our main focus.
So a brief introduction to the airlines industry in Malaysia. Domestic air travel actually began in 1947 with the very first passenger service flying from Singapore to Kuala Lumpur. Prior to the entry of Air Asia and Malindo Air, the industry was practically a monopoly, dominated by the Malaysia Airlines MAB. The products offered by commercial airlines industry is essentially a service, with its core business being the service of transporting passengers and goods from one location to another. Players in this industry incur significant capital and operating expenditure, for example, procurement of aircrafts, operating costs, fuel, and even labor. To operate domestically, an airline must be issued with the necessary permits, which is the Air Service License and the Air Operator Certificate. This, however, does not apply to international carriers, as they are governed by the necessary bilateral agreements between Malaysia and their respective home countries. So before we walk you through the market structure of the industry, we would like to give a bit of a background on the firm we have selected. Air Asia, as everyone knows, was actually incorporated in 1993 under DRB HiCom, but due to heavy debts, the firm was acquired by Tony Fernandez and his team in 2001. Air Asia has seen many success stories throughout the years and has grown to become one of, if not the most successful air carrier in Malaysia. As at 2019 pre-COVID times, it has a record of 160 destinations serviced by 24 hubs. Next, we will look at the market structure of the airlines industry in Malaysia. We opine that the industry is an oligopoly based on the following facts. Only 6 out of 8 firms, local firms that have received the necessary permits, operate scheduled flights from and within Malaysia. Based on the figure below, we can observe that the industry is dominated by 2 large firms, mainly Air Asia, followed by Malaysia Airlines. It was reported by the Malaysian Aviation Commission (MAVCOM) that the industry has a HHI of 2167, which indicates that the industry is moderately concentrated. This, however, as we discussed in our paper, does not account for firms with higher market share in a specific segment, such as the low-cost or domestic routes. As you can see in figure 11, the domestic route market by passengers is dominated by Air Asia. This might mean that the airlines industry in Malaysia may even be more concentrated than what's been reported. Additionally, there are significant barriers of entry due to the economies of scale formed by Air Asia and Malaysia Airlines. The limited number of government permits issued and the high startup costs involved may also pose a barrier of entry to new entrants of the market. We can also observe that pricing-wise, the market structure allows bigger firms like Air Asia to be the price maker, which can be seen especially with Air Asia's pricing strategy causing other airlines, even Malaysia Airlines, to launch their Super Savers campaign.
Aside from the HHI, let's look at the fleet size and the annual revenue earned by the major competing airlines in Malaysia. In an overview, Air Asia has a dominating fleet size of 247 narrow-body Airbus A320 with an occupancy of 180 passengers, with a future purchase of A321. In contrast, Malaysia Airlines has a more diversified narrow-body and wide-body fleet consisting of Boeing and Airbus. Malindo, on the other hand, has the smallest fleet size among the three. For the purpose of comparison, data compilation from CAPA report and annual report of Air Asia from 2010 to 2013 highlights that Malaysia Airlines is leading in terms of annual revenue made. However, our report finds that the revenue made by MAS is offset by the escalating operation costs, causing negative net profit. Unfortunately, the revenue comparison cannot be made for Malindo Air, as it is not a public listed company. Air Asia's main product offering is their seat and are supplemented by the ancillary revenue. Malaysia Airlines offers a variety of classes to cater different passenger profile who prefers to travel economically to the exclusive first class. To differentiate itself from the major player, Malindo marries the best of full service and low cost, thus establishing itself as a hybrid airline. all three airlines practices discrimination pricing strategy in which passengers are charged differently according to various groups. Comparatively, AirAsia and Malindo practices penetration pricing strategy in which they offer low prices for the new product offering. As a highlight, in 2010, MAS practiced predatory pricing strategy due to the pressure from the rising fuel price.
Next, we're going to look at the factors that actually affects the demand for air travel. The first one will be in terms of the price of product. The lower the airfare, the higher the demand for the particular service. This is evident with Asia, whereby the average airfare for Asia ticket is much lower compared to the Malaysian domestic air carriers. Hence, Asia controls almost 50% of the total passenger air traffic in the country. Second one will be in terms of the consumer income. Higher the income, higher the demand for air travel. This can be seen by taking the ratio between the growth of air passenger traffic and also the growth rate of the real GDP, which shows that the air travel demand is a luxury good for Malaysians. The third one will be in terms of number of consumers. Boeing, for example, forecasts an estimated 5.0% growth in air passenger traffic for the Asia Pacific region, mainly driven by the increase in population. Other than that will be the prices of goods related in consumption. Substitute goods will have a negative impact compared to the complementary goods such as hotel will have a positive impact to the air travel demand. Next, we're going to have a look at the factors that actually affects the supply of air travel demand. The first one will be in terms of the price of inputs of production such as fuel price. Fuel price can actually constitute up to 32.3% of the total operating costs. This means that any increase in the fuel price will have to be transferred to the customers via the increase in airfare. However, airfare can only be increased up to a certain limit. Therefore, post that, the airlines will have to reduce the flights or reduce the supply in order to maintain the total operating costs. Next one will be in terms of the technology. Airbus, for example, have actually upgraded the Airbus A320 variants to Airbus 21 Neo, which can actually comes out with an increased capacity and reduced fuel consumption, which can improve the operating performance of the airlines. The third one will be in terms of expectation of future prices, whereby the airlines will tend to increase the number of flights to routes which can actually charge higher, especially during peak seasons, as can be seen from the figure shown below. Impact of the airlines due to COVID-19 can be seen in various ways. The first one is the change in airfare. When the first ever restriction was announced, there was a huge drop in demand and hence there was a drop in the airfare price as well. Now, once the travel restriction has been lifted, we can see the airfare has actually increased. This is also driven by the policies of state governments, which actually limited the number of flights into the states such as Sarawak. Other than that, we also saw a reduction in the overall demand up to 75.5% when the first travel restriction was announced. MEFCOM, however, expects this number to increase to 216 and 525 in year 2022, mainly driven by the pent-up demand. This is actually evident with the load factor that was actually recorded by Asia up to 80 to 90% to famous domestic destinations such as Langkawi. Other than this, air cargo traffic was also impacted. When the first travel restriction was announced, we saw a drop in the air cargo traffic volume. However, currently due to the improvement in the supply chain and also increase in the e-commerce activities, we expect the air cargo traffic to increase post-COVID.
So now we will be discussing on the elasticity of AirAsia. In general, our group has agreed that the price elasticity of AirAsia is relatively elastic. The first point to support this reasoning is due to the price of goods. In general, the higher the price of goods, the goods are relatively more elastic. In this case, we are using the passenger carried and the average fare in the year 2018 and 2019 to do the comparison, and it resulted in a 5.21, which means that every increases of 1% of price will lead to 5.21 decreases of demand, making the price elasticity of demand to be elastic. Second is the nature of goods. So the AirAsia is considered as luxury goods as the EI is more than 1. So the next point to consider why we say that AirAsia has a relatively elastic price demand is due to the spending on the good as a percentage of total income. So based on the income elasticity that we calculated in the previous slide, the airline ticket range of the monthly wage spent on it is 5.5% to 5.6%, which is considered to be relatively elastic as aeroplane is just a as a way to get from one point to another. So there are other expenditure to be considered of when people are traveling, especially from the lower and middle income, where they travel for leisure and are very cost conscious. The next point is the availability of substitute goods. So as AirAsia is an airline industries, they offer transportations to the passenger from point A to point B, which is considered as a transportation. So if they have a larger choice of transportation to get from point A to point B, then AirAsia price of elasticity would be relatively elastic. In this case, as you can see, the air travel for the 2020 is only 1% and in 2019 is only 0.9%. So the fifth reasoning why we are saying that AirAsia has a relatively elastic price of demand is due to the possibility of good consumptions postponements. So if the consumers are able to postpone the consumptions of the goods, then the goods are relatively more elastic. In the cases of AirAsia, the passengers are able to cancel their tickets and able to redeem it back in a point of credit account, which is valid for 3 years, making it more relatively elastic.
In conclusion, in Malaysia, the aviation industry has evolved from a monopoly market structure to an oligopoly. AirAsia's entrance into the market and subsequently Malindo Air has broken down the dominance of Malaysia Airlines. At the international level, aviation has survived the tragic 9/11 incident and the SARS outbreak in early 2000s. With the advancement of technology, AirAsia and the industry as a whole will definitely take on the skies again. Thank you.